extend invitations to New Mexico State, Liberty, Jacksonville State, and Sam Houston University to join the Conference USA. Callan, you know this conference pretty well. You've worked in some small schools. You've done all that. I mean, I'm just kidding. I'm just playing with you, Callan. So, what are your thoughts on this?
I for one, am probably one of the most skeptical college sports fans out there when it comes to all this realignment talk, fellas. And I've been this way since Isaiah, myself, and Sammy Sharp talked about the first big domino of Oklahoma and Texas choosing to leave the Big 12 for the Southeastern Conference. And this has become a pretty, I wouldn't say out of control, but is becoming a bit of an out of control situation where I still believe that this is not going to work with all this movement. I know that it's all about football. It's all about the money and the TV revenue coming in for these conferences and for these programs. But at the same time, though, fellas, there was a very damning revelation of a story I sent to our host chat on Wednesday night before I was working my women's soccer match at USD when we played St. Mary's, that there is now, right now, fellas, an ongoing fight right now between James Madison University and the Colonial Athletic Conference, where James Madison, I believe, has already drafted plans, guys, to depart from the Sun Belt Conference. And if they were to leave or make an official statement or announcement, guess what? Their student athletes and their teams get punished by the CAA where they can't play for a conference championship. And James Hickey, who I happen to know, who works as a PA announcer and a band manager at JMU, was constantly retweeting outraged parents and outraged student athletes who had written letters to the conference front office, and parents, disapproving and calling the commissioner a clown and nothing more than a joke. This guy's right here is the reason why I really believe a lot of this, moving of the chess pieces is not going to work, because you are going to have something like this happen where, just for example, say if Gonzaga ever left the West Coast Conference, and then if they chose to, we're going to go to the Mountain West, and this is all hypothetical, but just think, though, that if this happens where, Gonzaga announces plans to move to the Mountain West Conference, oh, sorry, Gonzaga, you can't play for the men's basketball championship. Oh, you can't play in volleyball. Oh, you can't play in, in all these other sports, though. And that's where I think more so my gripe is, as a former athlete, student athlete myself, though, is I would be absolutely irate, enraged, pissed, fuming, and pulling the hair out of my scalp that all my hard work is going to be going right down the drain because some people in a conference front office want to hold you hostage and hold this grudge against you because something out of your control as a student athlete is taking place with this JMU incident, where, again, guys, I really don't believe that these moves are going to work. I know you may sound, oh, come on, man, you work in college sports. I do. I don't work in college football. I don't care about college football. I care about college volleyball, college basketball, college baseball, college softball, college soccer, where I know that football is like, it funnels in. It's like a giant funnel when you change your oil in a car. It goes from football and it funnels all the way down to the rest of the programs. But I don't know if this is really going to work. Yes, it may look great, but like I told John Alcorn, though, when the whole first story broke about OU and Texas wanting to leave, though, what happens, though, or what would have happened if the Big 12 didn't invite BYU and Cincinnati and Houston, and they would have dissolved that conference? And if Texas and Oklahoma got tired of getting crushed every week by Bama and Georgia, mainly in football, there's no way out. There's no exit. There's no evacuation route or procedure to go back to the Big 12, because that conference would have been gone goodbye. That'd be the same thing with the West Coast Conference if Gonzaga ever left. Yeah, I know that BYU's leaving, but there's, at least in my mind, I'm not going to speculate, but I can think of at least two schools who could fill that void once BYU does leave the West Coast Conference. There may, in fact, be some more shuffling at the D2 level, and one of the conferences I work in the Pac West. There's been some rumblings of some of the schools up in Isaiah's neck of the woods who probably can't make ends meet with money. They may have to fold their athletic programs. And I've already seen this, guys, twice in the time I've been at Point Loma Nazarene. We've lost BYU Hawaii. We've lost Notre Dame Dana Muir. There's been some, not full-blown rumors, but some discussion that maybe colleges in Oakland, colleges in San Rafael might not be able to keep playing because of enrollment or because the athletes don't choose to go there and stuff like that. So again, I think it's great that, there's so much movement, but I just, for one, fellas, and again, you can call me stupid or an idiot, but I just don't think that a lot of this movement is going to really benefit college football or even college sports, especially when you maybe have programs who aren't known for football. And then if they go to a, very good basketball conference and they keep getting crushed, what do you do about the whole program? If it was football only with all these moves going on, I'd be totally fine with it. But with every program going, though, I don't know if this really works because the competition could be, here in one conference and then it could climb, by 10 or 100 times going to, for example, the SEC or to the ACC or the Pac-12 and stuff like that. I know there's been so many rumors for years about San Diego State, for example, in football going to the Pac-12. I don't see it happening because USC and UCLA basically run the roost with recruiting in Southern California for college football, including here in San Diego. Maybe basketball, maybe baseball, maybe soccer. But again, with football, I just don't know, guys, if this really is going to work out. I mean, I get the fact, though, that these schools are giving invites out to let programs move freely. But as someone, though, who works inside of D1 and D2 athletics, I really don't see, fellas, how a lot of these programs survive their first few years moving the chess pieces on the board. The Big 12 I thought was going to be dead when OU and Texas left, but thankfully they reached out to 4 other schools. I know that Isaiah doesn't care a lot about other conferences, but you have to really consider, like the CAA, with them banning James Madison from potentially playing for a conference championship because people that are not playing the games are saying, hey, if you release this statement, you're not able to play. You're disqualified for playing for a conference championship. And again, you're gonna punish the kids. It's like a divorce, fellas. You're gonna punish the kids because you and your wife or spouse couldn't make things work out. You're gonna punish the kids for your faults or their faults. That's more of what I compare this to. And then I think you just also have to think about small conferences, though, who probably, like the WCC again, who are not a football conference or the Big West or conferences like that, where they're driven by basketball, they're driven by baseball, they're driven by other sports that Isaiah does not find interesting to watch every day like I do, and things like that. But again, I get the whole idea, though, of them moving the puzzle pieces around. But honestly, Loro and Isaiah, I have a very grim and bad feeling that a lot of this movement is not going to pan out. I hate to be the Debbie Downer, but as someone, like I said, who works inside of both D1 and D2 college athletics, I mean, it may look great on paper, guys. It may look like a super team. But once you kind of get that first dose of reality when you have to play a big, bad program in Division I or in a new conference, it's a very tough rude awakening.
It is. So before we get to Isaiah here, we will have a comment from Ishmael Lancaster. And he also wants to say, good evening, gentlemen. And he has a question for us. And he also says, quick question, fellas. Is Isaiah Austin Reeves a gent? He was only one hyping him up this much. And then before we get to that, he also says, I thought Isaiah was a Mississippi State fan after his amazing spiel yesterday about their quarterback Rodgers and Mike Leake. So I don't know what to say about that, but also back to the Austin.
I don't know, Isaiah. Are you Austin Reeves' agent?
When have I hyped him up besides tonight on the program? Actually,
every Minneapolis, Los Angeles Laker game that they played this season, I get text at 3:00 in the morning about how great this kid is and stuff like that.
Well, that's because I recognize greatness. I think this kid, like I said, he has the potential to be Tyler Hero 2.0.
Give us your thoughts about college realignment, sir.
So my thoughts on this, first of all, I am extremely thrilled for the New Mexico State Aggies because we had Colin Deaver on, I believe, a couple months ago, and he was talking about how the Aggies really wanted to move to a conference because it would give them, a lot more money. It would give them a TV deal, all that good stuff, and it would help boost their program because let's face it, New Mexico State, their football program, their athletic program just doesn't have that much funding. So he really wanted them to get into a conference. And with all this conference realignment thing going around, I'm glad that the Aggies got picked up because it would have been a shame if everybody was moving, but the Aggies were stuck in independent because nobody wants them since their football team is so dang bad. So I'm happy for the Aggies.
I don't hear Notre Dame complaining. I don't hear BYU complaining about being independent.
Well, but Callan, really, you can't put you can't put those two schools though.
I don't hear BYU or Notre Dame complaining, and they're both independent. I don't even hear UConn complaining, and they're independent too.
But the Aggies' issues. That's been well documented. But in terms of the Conference USA, I think they had to do it just because I guess you have to have 8 schools in a conference to at least to be in the FBS, so they had to do it because everybody's taking, starting with the SEC, taking Texas and Oklahoma from the Big 12, and then Big 12 takes a bunch of American Athletic Conference schools, and then they take a bunch of Mountain West, Conference USA.
BYU is not in the Mountain West Conference, sir.
Well, yeah, they got BYU. BYU is independent, but you know where I'm going. So it's basically a trickle-down effect. I don't know if this is going to work, to be honest with you. I really don't know if it's going to work. For me, as an SEC fan, I'm really thrilled because we get to add 2 of the biggest programs and brand names into the
SEC bandwagoner is Isaiah. You're no fan. You are a bandwagon, sir.
I agree, Callan.
Thank you.
Having said that, though, it's good for the SEC because the SEC gets strengthened. But in terms of this, like Callan said, I just don't know. I'm proceeding with caution right now simply because if you are like a Texas, like an Oklahoma, and you're used to all this winning, especially Oklahoma and Texas with all their fans, be like, oh, we're this great school. You go into the SEC, there's no way Texas is going to be above Georgia or Alabama or even Florida in some years. There's no way. Maybe Oklahoma can legitimately challenge them because they actually have a really good football program and they got a really good coach. But in terms of the other sports, I just don't know. So I'm happy for New Mexico State because they definitely needed to be in conference. It really is going to help save their athletic program and help them have better facilities. And so I'm happy for them. But like Christy mentioned, if we could pull it up, that would be great. That comment from Christy, it's extremely complicated. And I think you got to proceed with caution right now. I think that's what you got to enter. It's not like it's a slam dunk. It could be good, but it also could potentially backfire. It's like a big gamble.
The bad outweighs the good in my mind when it comes to this sort of stuff. And like I've said, with me being in D1 and D2 athletics, you really don't know what goes on. But more so, I agree, though, with Isaiah and Christy that I think that in this instance, guys, the bad outweighs the good in my mind, and it's not even close.
Callan, Laurel, before you go, I got a question for you before we move on from this topic. And that is, you have known San Diego State. They're in your conference, I believe.
No.
There were rumors, I believe, that they had rejected an invitation from the American Athletic Conference a couple weeks ago because they wanted to move to the Pac-12 or even the Big 12. What was your thoughts on it? Do you think that SDSU made the right move, declining that American Athletic Conference invitation, which, let's face it, American Athletic Conference, I feel like would be kind of it wouldn't be like a upgrade from the Mountain West because they're not Power 5. So what was your thoughts on that?
This is the second time I can recall that the Aztecs tried to move. Again, I don't actually work at San Diego State. I work at the University of San Diego in the West Coast Conference. This is not the first time, though, that SDSU has tried to leave the Mountain West. They did try, I think in 2013 to go to the Big East, I think, when it was like Tulane and Houston, may have been Central Florida, and that was going to be a football only move. I think them and Boise were both trying to get out. That obviously didn't happen. But now with the American, I recall hearing that story though. But like I said though, SDSU has been pretty hell bent on getting into the Pac-12. I think for everything, because for one, men's soccer is the only sport that I know of that is not in the Mountain West, because the Mountain West does not sponsor men's soccer. So they've been playing in the Pac-12 for who knows how long, Pac-10, Pac-12. And while I think that they still are hell-bent on getting into the Pac-12, I personally don't see it happening. Like I mentioned, though, because USC and UCLA basically could say, no, we already have 2 SoCal schools in the conference. We basically recruit in San Diego, so thanks, but no thanks. I could maybe see other sports, maybe basketball, maybe even baseball, softball, maybe even as well. Obviously, men's soccer is already playing there. Volleyball, maybe, who knows? But at the same time, though, the Pac-12 for football, I don't see it coming to fruition. I honestly really don't even see it really coming to fruition for any other sport, maybe for San Diego State, with again minus men's soccer, with it being a non-Mountain West sponsored sport. But in the grand scheme of things, though, I think they've been trying for so long. I think that with them having like this great reputation, winning with football, beating Pac-12 teams, and basketball beating Pac-12 teams is great and all. But again, I think that USC and UCLA kind of having like the stranglehold a little bit on Southern California for recruiting for all sports, not just football. But also, I do think, though, that the reason why that they have not left Isaiah for the Pac-12 is because the Mountain West kind of needs San Diego State, like how Gonzaga and the WCC are a perfect marriage. Because if you lose that, you're kind of in a way scrambling, because minus San Diego State, there's really not a very like marquee draw or a marquee conference school, honestly, in the Mountain West that I can think of without SDSU. You can probably think of Wyoming or Colorado State,
Boise.
Maybe New Mexico State, Boise State, maybe Nevada, Reno. But at the same time, with how San Diego State draws here at Viejas Arena for every home game, even during conference play, I really don't see San Diego State moving unless USC and UCLA kind of back off finally and say, okay, we'll let you come in. But I think that this is still years away. Plus, you still have to kind of wait for that stadium to be built, though, which is still being done. And I think, though, that kind of in a way, though, more so, I kind of think, though, Isaiah, this does bring a good point to my head, though. I do think, though, that it's almost in a way that while State has been scheduling Pac-12 teams, I also do think it's kind of like the Pac-12 saying, okay, you want in? Prove you can hang with the big dogs. Prove you can beat USC, UCLA. Prove you can beat Arizona State in baseball. Prove you can beat all of our schools come basketball season. Beat us in volleyball. Beat us in soccer. Beat us in every, once you can prove you can hang with the big dogs, then maybe we'll throw you a bone, is what I kind of think, though. But believe me, Isaiah, this has been going on for a while. I, for one, just don't see it happening for a while. Maybe not ever, but I won't say never. But certainly they've tried with the Big East for football. They tried the American. The Pac-12 is going to kind of be their spot to go. And I really don't see it happening. In a way, it reminds me a lot of Hawaii, your beloved Rainbow Warriors playing football only in the Mountain West, where, again, they were a WAC team way back when the WAC was the actual WAC. And now they're Big West for everything else, though. So I don't see see it really happening. Ishmael, what I can recall, though, about them leaving the WAC, as Isaiah said, that was about money, but also that the whole conference geography has been put through the shredder. I mean, you're talking about a Western Conference, the WAC, the Western Athletic Conference, having schools in Kansas City, Chicago, I think in Indiana, Iowa, Oklahoma, Texas, I think. So it's not really much of a Western Conference now that the Mountain West essentially is the old WAC of San Diego State, Fresno State, those sort of schools. So I think it was more money, It was more of that, but also I think that the geography kind of got thrown out of place, though. And I do want to bring up this comment that Ishmael said, though, too, that his issue is some of the schools that are moving. What if they play sports that their new conference doesn't sponsor? What happens? Again, Ishmael, to my point, SDSU men's soccer plays in the Pac-12 because, you answered the question, the Mountain West Conference does not sponsor men's soccer. Case in point, too, we have on the women's side, Colorado College, who I believe is a D2 program, their conference does not sponsor women's soccer. So what happens? They play in the Mountain West Conference. So again, Ishmael, that is more so the other thing, though, is that, mainly both conferences that I work in, from my experience, they are both non-football because they're both Division IIs. They're all Western-based, and they're all religious or faith-based universities for the majority of the conference. And I believe, I don't want to, step on anyone's toes at USD, but I believe that the West Coast Conference might have a small loophole that if and when BYU does leave, that I believe, I might be wrong though, but I believe what I have gathered from some folks who have worked at the school have said that the WCC wants to keep it all faith/religious/private-based universities. And I think the two that have popped into my head who could, keyword here is could, please don't quote me, but could perhaps join Grand Canyon and Seattle University. Again, GCU right now is currently in the they are both, or GCU is in the WAC right now, in the WAC, and they have a amazing fan base down there. I actually worked a game when they came to USC to play the Toreros when Dan Marley, Suns legend, was their head men's basketball coach. They brought like 4,000 people from Phoenix to USD for that ball game. So they have a following. They have a great fan base. So maybe they could, in fact, get an offer. I've even heard a couple of things at the D2 level, Ishmael, in the conference that I work in at Point Loma. Maybe Westmont College, maybe the Masters, who the women's team played the night for hoops. So I think Ishmael's onto a great point, though, guys, that's where things get fuzzy. That's where things get very hairy. What if there is a move made, but that conference doesn't sponsor men's soccer or doesn't sponsor certain sports, and things like that. But again, a lot of moving pieces. I think that Adam or that Ishmael's right. Too many moving pieces. And it makes my head hurt. I definitely agree. But Loro, back over to you.